$18 million came out of a private vault in Manhattan over one weekend. $4.5 million of it in cash ended up in a storage unit in New Jersey. And it took 6 years and a woman with a clearing book to wash it, and it never did come clean. And underneath all of that, in every single film, there has been a man nobody was looking for. 4 sets of footprints left that woodline. 3 of them have been accounted for since 2019. The 4th one signed a visitor's book. This half is about what 6 years of selling people buys, and about the afternoon the machine that had been protecting him stopped answering the phone. In a federal visiting room, 400 miles from the storage unit that started all of it, the man who was client 61 is asked the same question for the 11th time in a year. Who was your partner? He is serving a long sentence. He has already cooperated. He has given them the vault, the ceiling, the fence, the car wash, the attorney, the nominee, and the woman with the book, and he has been credited for every single one of them. There is nothing left in him that anybody wants, except a name he does not have, because the government can see the shape of it. There is money that moved before he was ever involved. There are decisions in the structure of that pool that were made in 2017, and he did not walk into it until 2019. Somebody built the room he was standing in, and somebody was taking a percentage out of it while he stood there. And he says, every time, the same thing. I did not have a partner. It was my money. It was my mistake. And he believes it. He is the only completely honest man in 5 films, and he is wrong about the single most important fact of his own life. There was a man inside his money for 6 years, taking a cut of it. And that same man is the reason the federal government knew where to look in the first place. He will never learn this. He will finish his sentence in his 50s, still explaining to people that he worked alone. Here is how a man with a notebook takes apart a book that 2 governments could not. He does not break into anything. He does not steal a file. He collects netting statements. 3 of them, from 3 different clients, from 3 different years. And every one of those clients believes he is the only person talking to the apologetic little Englishman. Then he does something almost childish. He adds them up wrong, on purpose, in front of a 4th client, and he says the total out loud, and he gets it slightly too low. And the 4th client corrects him. 14% is the published fee. Every client knows it. It is charged whether the loop closes or not, and nobody has ever objected to it. Because 14% to make cash boring is the cheapest thing any of them will ever buy. Underneath it, there is a second line. 1.5% applied to gross positions, described on the statements as clearing variance. It is not itemized. It is not disclosed. And it does not stay in the book. Over 6 years, on roughly $90 million of obligations, 1.5% is about $1,350,000, and every dollar of it has been going into a ledger that does not belong to the woman who runs the pool. And so, on a Thursday morning, a private investigator from Northwest London sits down in a bright office in Houston, apologizes twice, and puts a single page of her own arithmetic on the desk in front of her. And for the first time in 5 films, Owuli does not know something. She does not raise her voice. She reads it twice. She asks him to leave the page. For 6 years, she had been the only person in the room who knew everything in it. That ended on a Thursday, with a man who had lost his umbrella. At 6 in the morning, on a working marina on a coast the United States cannot reach, 4 men who are not American police walk down a concrete jetty and arrest a man in a faded shirt who has run a boat business there since 2019. He does not run. He has been expecting somebody for 6 years. At exactly the same hour, 4,000 miles away, the man who was client 61 is being walked through processing at a facility in the American Southeast, holding a paper bag with his own clothes in it. 2 men losing everything on the same morning for opposite reasons. One of them because he told the truth about everything. The other because for 6 years he answered to a dead man's name. He is not Wesley Grant. His name is Rennick. In 2019 he bought a name that he had been told, by somebody in a position to know, was permanently free. He paid for it. He used it on a boat license, a lease, and a marriage certificate. And for 6 years he has been the most searched for man in America, without ever once being the man they were searching for. The photographs the journalist took in 2022 are photographs of him. The file that was opened on Wesley Grant in March of 2019 is still open this morning. It is one of the longest-running fugitive files in the district. There are agents who have worked it for 4 years and could recite his dental records. The man in that file has been dead since October of 2019, in a rented room above a marina, 40 miles up the same coast. And the person who sold his name knew that before anybody else on Earth did. Priya Rahman is 36 now, promoted 11 months ago, which means 49 files instead of 41, and a title that lets her sign things. One of those files has never closed. Case 29, a clearing structure she could describe in her sleep, that she could not prove, and that she was told, politely, twice, was not the best use of her time, She agrees to meet Sorav in a coffee shop near a train station because he asks her about that case, and because nobody has asked her about it in 2 years. And she reads him faster than anybody in this film. By his third apology, she knows exactly what he is doing, because it is a version of what she does, and she tells him so. He agrees cheerfully and does not stop. Then she tells him more than she meant to. Not because he tricked her, because he is the first person in 2 years who wanted to talk about the things she has been carrying alone, and there is nothing easier to open than somebody who has been ignored. And what she gets from him is the worst possible gift. He gives her the shape of the whole book. $90 million, 60 clients, 14%, and a second line underneath it. It is the best intelligence she has ever held, and she cannot use a word of it, because it arrived through a private investigator who is being paid by a client of the structure she is investigating. And every door it could open would be closed again by the first defense lawyer who read the chain. She never finds out she was aimed at that case in the first place. She never finds out at all. Solomon Katz is 68 years old and 4 months into a 4-year sentence in a low-security facility in protective status because he is cooperating. He has done everything asked of him. He identified stones he moved in 2019. He named 2 men in Antwerp. He explained patiently to a room of people 40 years younger than him how a fence prices things he is not allowed to look at properly. On a Tuesday in the spring, an officer finds him at the workbench they let him use, and the lamp is off. No cause is announced. There is no investigation. He was 68, and he had a heart, and men die in custody, and his file is closed with a single sentence in it. 2 weeks earlier, he had a visitor. 1 visit, 20 minutes, a name on a log, and beside the name, a category code, and the category code means approved federal contact, which is why nobody in that building looked at it twice for 4 months. Understand what that log means. In 2017, Solomon Katz wrote a receipt by hand for a favor and kept it. And that receipt is the reason he spent 6 years doing what he was told. He never learned who he was really working for. He said so himself. He does not know my name either. That is not trust. That is design. He protected that man for 6 years. He went to prison rather than give up a name he did not have. And the man he was protecting had been selling him, in installments, in a plain office, to a person with a file number, since 3 weeks after he came out of a hole in the ground. He had been selling him from the beginning. Now we have to go back to November of 2023 because you and I both got that month wrong. Here is what the last film told you, and every word of it is true. In November of 2023, the woman who ran the clearing book made a decision about client 61. She filed a report on her own customer correctly in the proper format, through the proper channel. She froze his position at 9 o'clock on a Tuesday morning. She absorbed a $318,000 loss in public in front of 60 other clients, and she bought their loyalty with it for another 2 years. Cold, elegant, and entirely deliberate. What the last film did not know is who moved first. 8 weeks earlier, in September, a federal tip line took an approach, not an anonymous one. It came from a source with a file number through a handler, and it was specific in a way that anonymous tips never are. It had the client number. It had the freeze mechanism. It had the name of the car wash, and it had the water usage. It had things that only somebody inside that book could possibly have known. Put the 2 dates next to each other, September and November. She was not choosing. She was reacting. By the time she filed in November, the government was already moving, and she knew it. And she had about a fortnight to decide whether she wanted to be the person who reported it or the person it was reported about. So she filed first, and she filed perfectly. And she made damage control look so much like strategy that 60 clients, 2 governments, and everybody watching read it as one. She did not decide which customer she could afford to lose. She found out which customer had already been taken from her, and then she made it look like a choice, which, in her business, is exactly the same thing as making one. A suburban railway platform, 10:20 at night, in a town of 19,000 people. A woman waits for the last train with a canvas bag on her shoulder. 11 minutes before that train arrives, a man walks to the far end of the platform and stands there. He does not sit down. He does not look at his phone. At 10:20, 2 men come up the stairs from the underpass and stop. The man at the far end of the platform takes 8 steps to his left and stands under a light. And that is all that happens. The 2 men look at each other. One of them says something. They get onto the train that has just arrived, and they are gone. And the woman with the canvas bag walks home along a residential road, puts her key in her own front door, and never knows that anything took place. Sabrina Grant is alive tonight because of geometry. 8 feet, 1 light, and a man who was already there. And here is the part that should genuinely disturb you. That protection was never arranged for her benefit. She is not a witness. She is not in a program. She has no agreement of her own, and she has never spoken to the man on that platform, and she never will. She is a condition, a clause, in somebody else's source agreement, reviewed every 3 months by people who have never met her, alongside a rating. The reason there was a man on that platform tonight is that Levi Adler is still producing. And the day he stops producing, there will be no man on that platform. Nobody has told her any of this. She thinks she got the last train. Saurav Bhatt never gets near a federal building. He does not need to. He makes 11 calls in 9 days to a fugitive task force, an inspector general's office, a records unit, and a retired agent in Delaware. And in every one of them, he is wrong on purpose and apologetic and slightly hard of hearing. And somewhere in the middle of that, a handler in a plain office does the one thing handlers never do. He reads his own file, end to end, 6 years of it, in one folder. An initial contact dated the 27th of March, 2019. A debrief the following morning. 31 contacts since. Quarterly reviews going back to 2020, and in the box on every single one of them, the same word. Excellent. And a schedule of what was traded, which reads, with the names taken out, like this. A fence in New York, a bookkeeper's employer, a nominee owner in Texas, a man in a papa, a container, an address in New Jersey, a courier on a wet road. Nobody ever chased Levi Adler. He was inside the file the entire time, spelling the names for them, and every single one of those names belonged to somebody who thought he was already dead. Then he reaches the last item in the folder, which arrived a fortnight ago. 2 pages long, the most boring document in this film. It is a disclosure, filed by a regulated entity in Houston, correctly formatted, submitted through the proper channel. It does not accuse anybody of anything. It does not mention an escape, or a lake, or a tunnel. It simply establishes, with dates, that a confidential source has held an undisclosed financial interest in the structure he has been reporting on since 2019. That is it. That is the whole weapon. 6 years of information, and every word of it is now worthless. She did not threaten him. She filed. So let us total it, the way we totaled the money. 4 men came out of that tunnel. 1 is in a cell for the rest of his life. 1 died in Ohio in a stolen car. 1 reached a coastline nobody could touch, and died above a marina 7 months later with no certificate and no grave, and is still, officially, the most wanted of the 4. Around them, Solomon Katz, dead in custody, 4 months into 4 years, 2 weeks after a visit that nobody flagged. Mac Vidal, dead in a paid-up hotel room, carried on a book for 4 years afterwards as an open position. Marisol Duran, off a wet road at 6 in the morning with both doors open. Rennick, in custody on a coast, under a name he bought from the only man who knew it was free. The financier, serving his sentence, still explaining to people that he worked alone. Priya Raman, holding the best intelligence of her career, which she cannot use, and which she will eventually put in a drawer. Client 22, paid back his $96,000 quietly and in full by the woman he hired an investigator to destroy. He never says thank you. She never expected him to. And Awuli, still working. 1 client lighter, 1 lie wiser. Never charged with anything in any jurisdiction, ever. And Levi. 1.5%, $1,350,000 in a ledger nobody can connect to a dead man, a house he owns outright, and a phone that used to be answered on the second ring that now rings out at a picnic table at a rest stop at 11 o'clock at night in the dark with nobody coming. He got everything he traded for. He simply spent the protection to get it. The last thing you see of him is a kitchen. 2 cups, warm light, a woman listening while he explains, at last, what he did and who he did it for. And then, when he has gone up to bed, 40 seconds of a woman alone at her own table, turning her phone face down on the wood. 4 men came out of that hole in the ground. 3 of them were hunted, and one of those 3 was hunted for years after he was already dead. The 4th one was never looked for at all. He drowned in 42 degrees of water on a Thursday morning in March, and the reason nobody could ever quite bring themselves to write the word deceased beside his name is that the man holding the pen already knew exactly where he was. Because Levi Adler had signed in the afternoon before at a front desk in Penn, and he had been on the payroll ever since. He never threatened one single person in 6 years. He simply told the truth to the only people on earth who could act on it, and let them do it. Nobody in this story was ever betrayed by an enemy. Every single one of them was betrayed by somebody they had already buried.